There are 151 Pokédex entries in the game Pokémon Yellow, and it is my current goal to beat this game with every single one of those 151 Pokémon in a solo challenge format. Now, some Pokémon are impossible to use, like Caterpie, but other Pokémon, like this one here, Gengar, it is quite the opposite. Gengar is one of the most readily and handily able to beat this challenge. And honestly, that sounds pretty good to me, because by the time you're hearing this episode, I will be on vacation. So this little episode is kind of a vacation for all of us in a way, right? We've been so used to these really difficult episodes with the weaker pre-evolution, the base evolution Pokemon really struggling to make their way through a lot of the later game, though sometimes being very walled off against Pokemon like the Onix and Geodude at Brock's Gym. You know, there's been a lot of different challenges throughout this, so it's kind of nice to be able to have a Pokemon that you can just sort of sit back, relax, and just sort of watch it all unfold in front of you, easy peasy, right? Gengar is definitely one of those Pokemon. Now, one of the only challenges that I think can really be posed to this Pokemon here, well, there are a few, but at least in the early game, is the fact that any kind of normal Pokemon you cannot use the move Lick against, because it does not do damage to them. But on the flip side of that, they also cannot do any damage to you. Rattata will only have moves like Tail Whip and Tackle and Quick Attack, and none of those will do anything to you as a ghost Pokemon. So, you know, there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Luckily, you are starting the game with a move like Nightshade, which can do damage to these normal type Pokemon. It does the same amount of damage as your current level is. So right now, for example, it would do 8 damage, 8 HP every time. And the higher my level, the more damage that will do. But we won't really be holding on to this move for a terribly long period of time. Now, we did of course beat our rival at the laboratory, but we're going to skip the second fight, just, you know, again, mostly for the sake of time. I'm effectively speedrunning this time. This is not my real entry, but this is sort of me dipping my toes in the water, so you say, so they say, so who says? Someone says it. I guess I'm saying it today. And therefore, we are going to just sort of see what we can get done with Gengar. I know that there are going to be a few places where there will be some actual challenges, because one of the cool things about this Pokemon is that even though it is a ghost poison type, it can learn moves like Psychic. And honestly, Hypnosis is a fairly broken move. It doesn't always hit, but once it does, it's a pretty solid additional thing for us to have at our disposal here. And I will say, I kind of did a lot of work with Dream Eater in this episode. I feel like I held on to it for far too long, but one of the benefits of Dream Eater is the fact that it is a move that does heal you. The downside to it is that, of course, you can only use it after a Pokemon is asleep, so you do have to make sure that if you are going to use Dream Eater, you must have Hypnosis on your learn pool here as well. So, you know, there are a couple little hang-ups with that as well, and perhaps we could sort of toy around with getting rid of that move and not needing the crutch of healing ourselves in some of these tight binds. Gengar should be strong enough to just sort of blast his way through. But a lot of that comes from the fact that, again, not only does it learn those other 2 Psychic type moves, but it learns the Psychic move, Psychic. And Psychic, as we've discussed in some of the previous episodes, is a pretty OP move, at least in Generation 1. It was incredible to use, and it is very fun to see it in action, in my opinion. It kind of just hits everything, and unless their special is extremely high, it usually does the trick pretty easily, right? So once we get our hands on that move, you're going to see this start to really kind of find a pretty sweet groove up until, again, some of those other future challenges. Some of those future challenges include Sabrina, because one of the great things about this game is the fact that ghost moves are not actually effective against the Psychic type, which is crazy because the whole thing was that ghosts were supposed to be able to counteract the very strong Psychic types. But the big problem here is, of course, the fact that since it is a ghost/poison type, yes, Psychic is super effective against poison. So we're going to have a pretty hard time against any Psychic Pokemon that can just rip right through Gengar's big old defenses. And the good thing, though, is that, of course, our special is pretty high, so it could potentially withstand some of the attacks depending on the level difference and the power level difference as well. But when you get to a gym like this, for example, it's not going to matter, right? Nightshade is going to be a great move here because, of course, like I said earlier, it's just doing the same damage as our level. They can't use a single move against us because all of his Pokemon only know normal type moves. Therefore, they don't even lay a finger or a rock or a pebble or whatever on us, and we just blast right through Brock. And therefore, we just blast right through Mount Moon as well. We avoid every single trainer that is not mandatory and just instantly skip through. We're going to skip the first gym trainer, do the second one, and then we're going to move on to Misty. We can definitely get through the first two gyms in under 10 minutes. Anytime you can see that kind of performance, it feels pretty good to me, at least. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can get here even faster, which is pretty exciting. I would love to see some other people's maneuvers once I've gotten through my own first take. I try to avoid anything that's going to influence my answers. I always want to try and give it my best shot on my own first. But we do beat Misty in under 10 minutes. We are almost done with the rival fight in front of Nugget Bridge at the 10-minute mark, and that is also, again, a pretty good benchmark for us. We've gotten through most of this. We're going to obviously then head up towards Bill. We're going to get the ticket, and we're going to head on down to the SS Anne. And here at the SS Anne, typically with the weaker Pokemon, I do a fair amount of training here, either all of the trainers or at least most of the ones that are in front of the important items. But here I really just pick up the rare candy and then immediately go on to fight Rival 3, because that's kind of all we really need to do here. We're able to skip a lot of the extra training that some of the other Pokemon might need, and there is also a little bit of a benefit of the fact that the kind of higher leveled Pokemon do level up pretty quickly in the very beginning, just because typically you're not going to actually see a level 5 Gengar. Gengar was, at least in the original version, not when you're patching something in, but it was a Pokemon that was only available through evolution by trading a Haunter to a friend and then trading it back so that you could have your very own Haunter. That was one of the reasons why it was harder to get it as a kid, I think, sometimes, but at the end of the day, I got my Gengar most of the time. Obviously, what you just saw was I picked up a Pokédoll. That's going to be pretty crucial for a factor later for us to be able to skip a lot of the storyline part of this game, which also helps with the time. Here, I pick up the move Psychic. It is finally in the Learn set, and that is going to take us pretty far. That is a crucial part to this, because then we're going to go to Erica's gym. We are under 30 minutes. We are fighting our way through this gym. It's not going to take us too long because, again, with a move like Psychic, and all of these Pokemon, with the exception of one, are going to be grass poison. So, of course, moves like Psychic, like I mentioned earlier, will just rip right through these teams. Now, the only trainer Pokemon that we will go up against that is not that type of dual typing is Execute, which is a Psychic secondary type. So obviously Psychic, the move, will not be very effective against that, but we have other means, right? But we're also not even really going to need to do it. In fact, I actually skipped 3 of the trainers here, so we won't even see that Execute. Now, here's the only thing that I feel like I kind of messed up here, was the fact that I, for a brief moment, forgot that just because the other Pokemon are grass poison, you know, Psychic obviously does so much damage against them, it's not super effective against grass, it's super effective against the poison. So I used Psychic kind of foolishly against the Tangela. Didn't need to do that. I definitely wasted one of my uses of that move. But in the end, we take out the first 2 Pokemon and we have moved on to Gloom. Luckily, Hypnosis hits just at the right time. It does wake up, but it is a moment too late. Nightshade gets the job done, and we have defeated Erica. Honestly, it could have gone either way there. That was a little dangerous, but at under 30 minutes, we have defeated that 4th gym, and we have moved on to Rival 4. And we could definitely get to this. If we're quick enough, we can definitely get to it in under 30 minutes. Can we do it? Oh, yep, there it is. Wow, barely, but pretty cool. This is definitely one of the faster runs that we've done so far. Obviously, Mew being one of the only exceptions to that rule. Mew is different. Mew is, a legendary Pokemon. Now, we're going to just sort of speed through a lot of this section here. Basically, I'm just showing that it didn't really matter if Koga's gym, as a poison type gym trainer, most of the Pokemon are psychic. Yeah, I guess the classic thing of surround yourself, keep your enemies closer kind of thing. All these Pokemon are super effective against his bug type gym, because that's definitely what he has in this game. He doesn't have his muck or anything like that. He's just got 3 Venonats and a Venomoth, and Psychic can take the first 3 out with 1 hit, and it will 2-shot the Venomoth. It's beautiful to see Koga go down so easily when with other Pokemon, sometimes we're really kind of struggling. Then we make it over to Silphco, we pick up a couple key items, and then we move up to this little area. There's a couple little back ways. There's a couple different ways that you can get to the rival, but the fastest way, through skipping through some of the story there, is through a warp panel on the 3rd floor, which is what I took. And then you get there, and honestly, there's not a lot to say about this particular fight. In the Rival 5 fight, when you are a weaker Pokemon, this could be a huge challenge. One of the first, larger challenges can be posed right here. But for Gengar, it's not hard. And we're actually going to cruise right through Team Rocket again. As always, these are all going to be one-shots, which is going to be perfect for us because it means that we can move on to Giovanni very quickly. We can do all of this in under 45 minutes. I definitely want to be able to get my Gengar time under an hour. And looking at this number, I actually think that if we are careful, we could do it. We could get around this exact same time in a future run and then also still beat the game in less than an hour. Now, you're going to see, though, that there are some very interesting moments in this game that are going to pose some different type of challenges for Gengar, I feel like. Just something that I feel like I haven't really seen yet in this game, which is a different type of wall that we've come across. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at Sabrina. Sabrina is, like I said, very effective against me. The Psychic there, yeah, of course. Okay, that's 44 minutes and our first reset. That feels pretty decent to me. I mean, obviously that should feel good for anyone, right? To get 44 minutes in before you have to do a reset. And for some people, maybe that would then still be the first gym leader, right? But luckily for us today, this is for the 6th gym badge. So that's good. Well, sorry to say that's good, but getting one shot by Psychic is a pretty scary time. Now, granted, Gengar is a slightly lower level here, so I use a couple of rare candies just to bring us up to level 50. This should give us a little bit more of a boost to the special and also to our speed, so we should be outspeeding. I think we already were, actually, now that I think about it, but either way, we are just going to make sure that we are doing the most that we can. We actually probably could have just immediately gone to Blaine, gotten another boost to our special, and then come back, but I felt like I was already here. Let's just sort of get it done. And there's a lot of interesting choices here in this fight against this Alakazam, both on both parts, right? I feel like I'm really trying to do some weird healing moves that aren't really doing much. He has used Reflect, so his defense is way up, but he also doesn't use Psychic at all, which doesn't really make sense for Alakazam. It mostly just used Psywave. So yeah, we got through there very quickly. Feels kind of weird, but I don't know if that was really a deserved win, but I'll take it. At barely past 45 minutes, under 50 still, we defeat Blaine in the first try. I mean, we weren't super effective against him, but he wasn't super effective against us, so as I said previously, I'll take it. We are now at still below 50 minutes. We are on to Giovanni. I think if we tighten this up, I think we can get this closer to 45, maybe under 45 to this section. And then, yeah, Dig is pretty devastating, so that can be pretty rough. Luckily, Persian does not have any moves that it can use against me. I can do the thing that I've mentioned before, which is I can put his Pokemon to sleep, and the ones that I'm super effective against, I can then use Dream Eater to also heal myself, which does feel pretty good. The problem is that if you don't take out Rhydon in one hit, you get that. Now granted, he could have thrown if he wanted to. He could have used one of his patented guard specs, but he didn't. So therefore, when it is a 2-hit and he go ahead and use Earthquake, yeah, that's going to be a reset. And that's also going to be a reset. Sometimes you get hit with one instantly, and that's not a great feeling. Now, we do have a few resets against Giovanni overall. This is another one of the gyms that I knew was going to create a problem. Again, this is the poison typing coming into play. Just because it's a ghost Pokemon does not mean that it's not going to be hit by some of these other things. The dual typing does put us at a large disadvantage. Earthquake is taught to like every Pokemon on this team, so of course it means that Gengar is struggling. So this is another moment where I say, okay, let's just start using the rare candies now. We don't have any kind of setup moves, so it doesn't really matter. And I also don't have any stab moves. There are no same type attack bonuses happening here. Mostly because, honestly, all of the ghost moves are not very good. And they're not really going to be effective in a gym like this that is based around ground type moves. So, luckily we have made it through to the third Pokemon with higher health this time. I still go for the Hypnosis and Dream Eater combo. Psychic has done us pretty well against all of them, but then, man, oh, Rhydon was so close. Rhydon was so close. Rhydon held on by just the tiniest sliver of health, and one devastating Earthquake later, we are knocked out. So there's been quite a few resets here. A little bit of it is RNG, but also, of course, a little bit of it is also the fact that I am not necessarily at the highest possible level that I could be at. Some of that being a little bit of the training from earlier. Ooh. That one's tough to see. 7 health is so dangerous. And then also using Hypnosis against Rhydon feels like a crazy move, but it does pay off. We knock out the Rhydon and we get to move on. Some of the RNG hit us pretty hard with that, but of course Rhydon or Nidoking using Earthquake is going to kill us every time, of course. So some of those deaths did make sense. We are now up to 6 resets, and boy, this is the part of the video that I knew I was sort of dreading having to talk about. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. I was just sort of setting the stage a little bit, and I think also more of preparing myself for it more than you. But also, yeah, definitely preparing you for it. But I feel like I just had to sort of let myself know, hey man, you're going to have to watch that one part back. And it's going to be really difficult to sort of relive this moment. I keep this channel family friendly, right? But some of the cuss words that I know were definitely being muttered under my breath during this section. This part was so difficult to deal with. There was honestly, the crazy thing is that once it goes right, you'll see that when it goes right, it goes right. This was, I would say, 70% bad luck, 30% user error, perhaps. Or perhaps just doing things out of the proper order or something, right? But most of this just came down to bad RNG. Like, we would get really close, but earlier on we got leech seeded and or paralyzed, and so then of course I get like a random, oh, you've been paralyzed 3 times in a row or something like that, and then I'm just slowly draining out my health and I can't do anything about it. Of course, if you get to Flareon, Flareon is also one of the types of Pokemon that has a move that, doesn't do a lot of damage, but if it's just chipping away at you and you can't attack first, yeah, the move is just going to keep going. They're just going to keep doing that. It's kind of like being Raplast to death, right? You're being Fire Spun to death. And this part was not exactly embarrassing, but I guess just sort of disappointing. Like, there was just so much bad RNG of them putting me to sleep, but me not putting them to sleep, or them paralyzing me and also not being able to evade the Leech Seed, and also, a body slam, a crucial body slam misses, or a crucial hypnosis doesn't go through. It's all those things just over and over and over again, to the point where we added basically 10 minutes and 10 resets to this gameplay. It just really drained the energy out of this run. I'll be honest. Luckily, I'll get kind of back on track in a moment here, but I really thought for a moment there's a small chance that we could do this in under 1 hour on our first go. And moments like that where it just sort of feels like nothing that you do is going to work. And there are some possibilities that maybe 1 or 2 different moves could have changed, the tide there, but I don't know. I guess hindsight is 2020 or 2025, right? But we will definitely come back to this. This is obviously one of the ones that I have to come back to, because especially once I start trying to do some speed runs, I feel like we can get a really, really good time with Gengar. I mean, if we could get those 16 down to, I don't know, let's just say 2, it would make a huge difference. The fact that we added 10 resets is wild. It's really a damper for, what you're kind of looking forward to for a good time. But honestly, it doesn't really matter, because at this point we have made it past the weird wall that we were facing, and we've made it to Lorelei here at Indigo Plateau and at the Elite Four. And if you look at this, this is not a challenge. We made it through with perfect health. That is significantly different than the last fight we were in, right? Now, granted, our rival has a lot of type coverage, and that's where a lot of the strength of that team came into play. But the gaps were not all that different from here. Now, luckily, Bruno is laughably bad, so we're able to just sort of cruise right through that section. That part is not really much different than what you're used to on this channel. Now, this one is the one that I think probably will have a lot of people a little nervous, right? Because granted, I am moving faster than her Pokemon, but we all have pretty good special, but we're also all very weak to Psychic type moves. Now, luckily, we've got some really good luck going on here, but Psychic is getting pretty low on its usage. We get a Psychic off, he puts us to sleep, but we have a very clutch same turn or next turn wake up. He misses with Dream Eater because we're awake, and then the last Psychic goes off, and we win against Agatha on the first try. That is not what I was expecting. I was expecting another wall at Agatha, but level 63 Gengar can get the job done. So that is a good note for the future, and knowing where we probably need to get to, at least level-wise, before we get to these Elite Four members. Now, we don't have anything that's super effective against Lance's team, but once again, if you just look at those base stats that we've got, these are raw. This is with no stat boosts or beyond what the badges do, and we're cruising through this section. We're cruising through Lance. And now with Lance out of the way, that means that we are moving on to the champion. Now, the last time we saw our rival NPC, right? The last time we saw him was about 10 minutes ago. And at the end of those 10 minutes, or the beginning of the whatever, however time works, right? We had just come out of a 10 reset battle against this same trainer. That has skewed these results pretty heavily. So the question that we have to answer here against the rival is, can we take what we learned in that battle and also know that he now has even better moves on most of these Pokemon, and of course, better stats. So how are we going to counterbalance that? At this particular juncture, we're taking some interesting gambles, right? Dream Eater is not going to do all that much damage against half of these Pokemon, and I'm still going for it. And unfortunately, the gamble does not pay off at the end of the day, because we get hit with a pretty hefty Thunderbolt and also paralyzed. Honestly, even Thunder Wave there would have been pretty rough for us, but it doesn't matter. They got the paralyze off, and even though we're technically faster, that cuts our speed. And once we're moving too slow, even though Gengar is mighty powerful, if I get paralyzed even once, especially against one of the only Pokemon that he has that has some form of super effective move against me, or at least one that will hit for a good amount of damage just because there's not a great resistance on this Pokemon for some of these moves, yeah, that's gonna be a recipe for disaster. Now, we did get the first 2 Pokemon on this next try very quickly, which feels good. The Exeggutor going down that easily, also very good. Getting a Hypnosis off successfully against Magneton and 2-hitting it feels very good. Gengar is finally starting to find its groove. The RNG is now starting to hit for us, although I say that, and then we get knocked down to 40. That got very dangerous. And Cloyster is not really giving us a lot of HP back because it's not a super effective move, but it gives us just enough that with a Hypnosis and 1 Dream Eater, Flareon is at about half health, and then they are just a 2-hit away. We end at level 66. We get a level up last second, right on that last Pokemon, and Gengar has made it through. 17 resets is a little insane. I think that we could get that down to, let's say 5 or less. I think that we could easily do that. And again, when you look at the time, it's not a great feeling, right? I totally get that when you have like the pre-evolution Pokemon, we all might be thinking, hey, 1 hour 14 is great. But again, Gengar should be able to easily get this done in under an hour. So therefore, this is one of those moments where I'm going to say it like I say in most episodes. I cannot wait to return to this Pokemon and try it again, knowing everything that I know. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've made it this far and you did enjoy the content, please feel free to give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. Any form of interaction that you do with this channel helps me grow tremendously. And remember to keep that in mind for all your other favorite small creators. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week for another solo challenge in Pokemon Yellow.